Howdy goons, it's me, Nimzy, and today I'm doing a live recorded video, I guess a live commentary thing. I don't usually do these, usually I script every single thing that I do, so I guess we're gonna hear what it sounds like when I'm not reading off of a script. Today we got the Conquer Pocket Advance, and today I'm gonna do some comparisons. We're gonna be comparing it to the RG that was recently released, and the thing that makes more sense, the RG34XX. And then I've also got a Game Boy Advance SP to compare it to as well. I do not have an original Game Boy Advance anymore. I kind of sold that thing as soon as I got a Game Boy Advance SP, but I do prefer the form factor on the original. If it had ever launched with a light up screen, it would have been perfect, but that never happened. So let's check it out. We got the Conquer Pocket Advance. Very nice, very fancy box as usual. It's about as fancy as their other boxes are. Very plain, very minimalist. I do like the little Mega Man that's hiding there. I think that's Mega Man. No, it's not Mega Man. It looks like it's Mega Man doing the jump pose. And then we've got the back. The back has got some extra details on it. You can see that it is a MediaTek G90T. It is Coral, 3GB, 32GB, and Android. So the Heliotech G90T is the same exact one that is in the Neo Pocket Air Mini. I have that lying around here somewhere. Maybe I should hold that out too. All right, I found it. It's right here, the Neo Pocket Air Mini. Let's do a crack check. Can we see it on this camera? The ones on the bottom are a little bit more. Crack there. I haven't played it in a while because of those not because of those cracks, but just because I got so much other stuff. So let's talk about this one. It's the same chipset as that one I just showed you, the Heliotech G90T, which is like the T820 from Ambernic, but slightly better. When playing Devil May Cry 3 on the PS2, it was about 7 to 10 frames higher. We got the system, we got some tags, an instruction manual. I'm not gonna need that because I always know what I'm doing. I am the knower. And then charging cable with no brick, which I guess is fine because it's just a standard USB-C to USB-C. I'm assuming it's going to charge the same speed as the Neo Pocket Air Mini, which is 20 watt, whichever. And then there is nothing else in the box. Even though the RG both came with screen protectors and were about $30 cheaper, the Pocket Advance did not come with any screen protectors, which I feel like you should just include one for free, because there's no way they cost so much that you can't just do that. Just include them for free. Your customers will appreciate it. All right, so here we got it. Now, it is the 3GB RAM model, and it is 32GB internal memory, but here's the thing. It is a Game Boy Advance player. You don't need more than that. A wristwatch can play the Game Boy Advance now, so there's no point in paying for extra RAM and memory that you're just not going to use. You can store every single Pixel game ever released on a single 32GB SD card. And I did get an SD card for this because I'm gonna try and put everything on the internal memory first. I'm gonna put it all on a micro SD first, and once it's all on a micro SD, I'll be able to swap it out should I decide to switch to Gamma OS next when it comes out, if it comes out for this device. So 3GB of RAM. Yeah, if you want more, you can totally get more. I know some people are saying they're doing it for Android gaming, but I honestly don't see the point. There's no analog sticks. Same with Game Hub, Game Native, or whatever. Sure, you can play a few games like that, but again, no analog sticks, so I don't really see the point in that. Honestly, the Pocket Air Mini should have had more RAM. I would like to see a Pocket Air Mini with 8GB of RAM, but yeah, this one's 32. You don't need much more than that because it is a Game Boy Advance. All right, so we're gonna peel off this nice sticker. Actually, you know what? We're not gonna peel that off yet. We're gonna talk about the form factor first. So, as you can see, it's very Game Boy Advance shaped. It's a little bit bigger than a regular Game Boy Advance. I can tell already. It feels a little heftier too. We got a D-pad and A/B buttons. And just like the Pocket Air Mini, this D-pad is silent. It's squishy. It's soft. The face buttons are too. The backseat buttons, they are as close as silent as you can get. Microphone can't even pick them up. And then let's compare to the Pocket Air Mini. Now, the thing about the D-pad is that the D-pad on these are uniquely quiet, uniquely squishy, unique in texture. I can't think of a single other device that I've reviewed or played with that has the same D-pad as these two devices do. This is like, I don't know, this is an Neo special, an Neo thing, because no other D-pad I've played with is like this. It's soft and quiet and squishy, and some people don't like it. I personally really like it on the Pocket Air Mini, so I'm probably going to like it on here too. I like that it's quiet. I like that it's squishy. I know some people like a rubber membrane to be require a little bit more force, a little bit more feedback, so it feels a little more confirmed that you pressed it, but I don't really have that issue. And then we got 2 little Tic Tacs here for start and select, and then 2 more little Tic Tacs in a different shape for the 2 Ioneo menus. We got the home menu and I think the Ioneo special menu. We've got L1 and R1 and then L2 and R2. The L1 and R1 are similar in shape to what we'd expect from like a regular Game Boy Advance. This is a RG34XX SP. If you want Game Boy Advance and nothing else, and you don't want Android or anything like that, the RG34XX is perfectly good. It is one of the closest clones I played with that is very close to the Game Boy Advance. This seems like it's more like Game Boy Advance with some slight elevations, like the RG34XX is also kind of like that in some regards. But as you can see, the L1 and R1 buttons are absolutely massive on the Pocket Advance, and I love that. I love bigger buttons. Bigger buttons are better. So, the RG34XX shoulder buttons are a little more funky, while the ones on the Pocket Advance are, the left one's clacky and the right one's thwunky. Yeah, this one's thwunky, this one's clacky. So that's interesting. People did mention on Reddit that the sound of the bumpers aren't consistent with each other. One sounds different than the other. Oh, maybe it's the way it's pressed, because the right one sounds clacky now. Either way, pretty quiet, just weirdly inconsistent. Feels really nitpicky to complain and talk about. The other issue is people said that the screen on the Pocket Advance is a little bit raised, and it's something that I would have never noticed if no one brought it up to me. I don't think mine is even doing it. Oh yeah, no, mine is slightly raised, but it's so slight that you would never notice it unless someone told you about it. I honestly don't think it's going to make a bit of a difference. It will, in the sense that it's more likely to scrape up against things in your pocket, but I don't think it's going to be an issue for me. Yeah, I can see it if I'm looking for it, but that doesn't really bother me. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny the things we'll complain about. It's like we don't want to be happy or something. And then, let's see, back to the top. The L2 and R2 are very loud and very clacky. They can actually be picked up on the microphone. And then we have LC and RC. Those ones are also a little clacky. And yeah, okay. So the positioning of them is good. These are L2 and R2. You're probably not going to press these ever. I think they're just more there because it feels like, you know, checklisty, like you have to have them. Power button's very clacky too. The reset or menu button here is exceptionally clacky. So the big shoulder buttons are comfy. I like the big shoulder buttons because when you're going to play a game like Metroid, where you're going to be holding down L a lot in order to use missiles and stuff like that, you want it big and you want it comfy. And then L2 and R2 here, they're just in a really good position. Like, should you actually need to use one, they're not going to be very far off. And then LC and RC, I feel like I had to brace against the crook of my hand here a little bit more in order to press them. They're not as easy to press. I actually can't press them unless I grip the console and hold it still. They require a little bit more force to push in than these top ones, and I think it's because that they're hidden in the crook here of where the cartridge would normally be. Now, the way that the RG34XX handles its shoulder buttons is similar. It's 2 shoulder buttons here. They're well sized, and I say they'd be good for Metroid and stuff too. So if you need a lot of shoulder use, they're good and well sized. And then the shoulder buttons on the RG34XX are a little more thunky, but they're silent though. They're thunky but almost silent. They're very hard to press though. I have to brace the system in my hand, or I have to push down on it to press them. So they have the same issue as the LC does, and it doesn't have any of the buttons right here. I do like that the L2 and R2 are here because I will end up pressing those quite a bit because of hotkeys, fast forward and stuff like that. I really only use fast forward because I play retro achievements on hardcore, so I'm not able to use save states, slow-mo, rewind, any of that. I have to only use fast forward. I can only use fast forward. So this is fine. I'm probably not going to play any PS1 on this because I know PS1 can be played without analog sticks for the vast majority of games except for Ape Escape, but I don't like it. I don't like not having an analog stick. I want at least a left analog stick for that kind of stuff, but this form factor doesn't really lend to it because of the minimal amount of space. The top here, one final thing, we have remake written in plastic here, in case you didn't know that this was an original Game Boy Advance. And then we got some exhaust holes, and there is a fan in there, and it doesn't don't need it. The Pocket Air Mini, even when I was playing PS2 games, I didn't really need the fan. It didn't ever really get hot enough that I had to worry about it. If something was making it hot, it was something that wasn't going to run well regardless. So for the things that you're going to play on it, I don't think it needs the fan at all. So you can probably just leave the fan off. And then speaking of the fan, there's fan holes here. And then we got a lot of grooves here. And someone said that this feels like it's going to be a dead skin magnet. And it's, I mean, I guess, but y'all clean your handhelds, right? Y'all don't, y'all remember to sanitize them every so often, right? Because these things, they're going out in all sorts of places, and then you're getting your hands on them, and then you're touching your face, your nose, your eyes, your mouth, food. You're making sure to wash your hands, right? And clean your handhelds. If not, you should, because you run the risk of getting yourself sick because you never never sanitize your phone or your handhelds. But I don't think, they don't feel deep enough that that would be an issue. I actually, since your fingers are here, really only your knuckles and this inner part of your finger rub up against those grooves. I don't think it's going to hold much dead skin. But you know what would fix that? A toothbrush and some alcohol. You just go, I'll clean it right up. There's grooves here that do nothing, grooves here for airflow. Again, you can play on the lowest settings. If you're just playing Game Boy Advance and pixel-based games, just set this to the lowest possible setting and then turn the fan off, and you'll get lots of battery life out of it and lots of, you won't have to worry about airflow or anything like that. We can probably take off this sticker. We probably don't need that. There we go. And then we got a Pocket Advance sticker that shows some extra little info. Model name, Conquer Pocket Advance, input voltage, 5 volt to 2 amp, 10 gen, Conquer Technology Company Limited, and then a bunch of other stuff. All right. Then along the bottom here, we've got the micro SD door, which actually I really like how they integrated this here. It's very stylistic despite just being an SD card slot door. And then downward firing speakers, which, yeah, it sucks, but it's better than backwards firing, which apparently is still an option. Thanks to Ambernick, we still have back firing as an option. And then the USB-C port and a mic hole. And then, oh, we got a headphone jack and a volume up and down wheel. And this is different from the RG34XX in the sense that it is a full actual wheel that fully rotates. The wheel on the RG34XX is a flick. You bring it to one side and you let go and it'll snap back to the center. Let me show you that up close. Oh, I turned it on by accident. Okay. So you see here, we pull it to the side. Yeah, not a real wheel. I guess we can peel this off now. And then this is a fully functioning wheel. We're gonna go ahead and, oops, how do we shut this back off? Putting that back off. It's not time yet. Probably won't be in this video actually, because we're just mostly focusing on comparing the systems, because I found that not a lot of people are comparing this to the other handhelds, or at least not to the RG34XX, which you think would be the one you would compare it to. I guess nobody else got it because no one's out, because it's just another H700 handheld, and also people aren't big on the original GBA form factor. I personally love it. It's the one I grew up with. So with that is the Pocket Advance. Now for the differences between this and the RG34XX. The face buttons are all the same size. On the 34XX, they are bigger on the A and B. I prefer that. You are going to be using the A and B a lot more. The X and Y here are going to be used for turbo. So I prefer it on this one. A single mono speaker on the front. I don't like mono audio, but I would prefer a single mono speaker on the front over two downward firing speakers, because that's, you know, at least you can claim that that's authentic. That's realistic. The D-pad is significantly smaller. I'd say it's pretty close to the original D-pad. It's very small. This, it is very large. A very large D-pad. You can tell even at a glance that it is much bigger. You can tell that the system in general is a little bit bigger. I'd say it's about maybe 10-15% bigger. Yeah, it's about, yeah, 10% seems right. It's about 10% bigger than the RG34XX. And the RG34XX is very close to the GBA original. So it's probably a little bit bigger than the original Game Boy Advance as well. But that means that this is going to fit in slightly less pockets. It's thinner overall by just a little bit. You can't really tell right here, but it is a little bit. Oh man, it's actually hard to compare the thickness of these two because the shape is not specific. It's not consistent all the way through. But you can see that it's just a little bit thinner. So while it is a little bit longer, it is also a little bit thinner. In some cases, this can fit in more pockets. In other cases, it won't. It's going to depend on your pants. But if for some reason you couldn't fit the original Game Boy Advance in your pants, then this one will not fit either. It is a little bit thinner and a little bit longer, so it's a little bit more phone-like in your pocket. So it'll fit in like some of the skinnier jeans. But it won't fit in It definitely won't fit in women's jeans, those ones with the half pockets. The RG34XX has no accelerometer, no microphone. It does have a headphone jack. These both have headphone jacks. It has a fake volume wheel, which it's weird for them to go this close with looking like a Game Boy Advance and then decide to not give us a real wheel. The power button's at the bottom. If that placement matters to you, I prefer the placement of the power button to be at the top. But as you saw earlier, if it's at the top and not sitting flush with the system, it's possible to turn it on by accident. The select and start are like the original, but the special menu button is at the top. The RG34XX has HDMI out. It has 2 SD card slots. The L2 and R2 are of a different style. They are quieter, but they are also much harder to press. It doesn't have a third set of shoulder buttons like the LC and RC on the Pocket Advance, so that's less hotkeys for people who care about those. If you're someone who is able to use save slots, you're probably going to prefer this because you will have that much extra dedicated hotkey buttons. The back is the same. I noticed that there's no lanyard slot on the Pocket Advance, which is a bit of a bummer. We love lanyard loops in this house. We love being able to have lanyards on stuff. This is Blythe's SP. And then I also have one on my RG Rotate. So we like to have lanyards in this house. So I feel it's a little weird to not just punch out a hole in the side here for a lanyard loop. There are things you can do to get around that. Like you can take the screw out and you can put a lanyard loop under the screw and then screw the screw in and it'll put it in and it'll hold that there. But it's just odd not to have one from the start. Oh, the rail differences. I forgot to talk about the rails. These weird rails on the side are kind of like signature to the Game Boy Advance's aesthetic. They don't actually do anything. I think they just hold the shell in place, or they used to. Now they're more of an aesthetic thing. They have a textured groove here. It doesn't have much of a difference on the feel of the console. I can't really feel the texture like that when I'm brushing up against it like this. The plastic, it feels similar to the Pocket Air Mini, which makes me worry because mine cracked, and the cracks that I got were spontaneous. The plastic does feel different than the plastic used in the Game Boy Advance. The plastic in the Pocket Air Mini definitely feels different than the plastic in the RG34XX. I wouldn't say one feels better than the other or more premium than the other. This one, just the Pocket Advance ones, definitely feels, it's more heavily textured. It's more of a matte texture. Feels like the back of Dragon Shield Magic the Gathering card sleeves. This is closer to a smoother texture on the RG34XX. The shoulder buttons are sizable on the 34XX, but I prefer the ones on the Pocket Advance. I think these are going to be better. Yeah. The D-pad is silent, soft, and squishy on the Pocket Advance. Same with the face buttons. They are not so on the RG34XX. On the RG34XX, you can feel the membrane clicking down when you press stuff. So there's a little bit more feedback there. Personally, I don't care about that. I've never had an issue with how the Pocket Air Mini feels, so I'm fine with this. There's a little bit of feedback from the initial press, but once it's down, you don't really feel anything. That's fine. I don't need a mechanical keyboard built into my console. Other than that, there's really not much difference other than the battery door that can be opened up, the lanyard loop. These are pretty similar. The main difference from these is just like the D-pad size, the overall increased size, which means it's going to be more comfortable. The fact that this runs on Android, the Pocket Advance runs on Android, which means it's more powerful than this one, which means you can have heavier shaders on this for your pixel games. So you can use your heavy-duty CRT shaders with this one more easily than you could with this one. With this one, I've used a CRT shader before, and it's just crashed RetroArch. If you want heavier shaders, the Pocket Advance one is the one to go with. And also, if you want better battery life, the Pocket Advance is going to be the one to go with because Android has better battery life. It just lasts longer. It sleeps better. In most cases, when I sleep a Android device, it'll use 1% or less of the total battery power over the whole night while it's sleeping. Whereas if you were to sleep something like the RG34XX, you'd miss a fourth or up to half of the battery by the time you wake up. It's not good for sleeping unless you're deep sleeping, but I mean, that depends on whether you use hardcore retro achievements. If you use hardcore retro achievements, you're probably not deep sleeping your console because you can't resume from save states. Android is also going to be harder to set up. Out of the box, Linux is ready to go for the most part, other than adding your games onto it. You'll also have to get new SD cards and flash the SD cards with the stock firmware or the CFW that you're going to use, and it's a little more user-friendly even with having to do that. The Pocket Advance is going to be less user-friendly because you have to do all the Android stuff, but if you're at the point that you're trying to choose between these two, you're probably someone who can handle the Android setup. So Android setup is mostly just going to be your usual setup. You download all the stuff, and then you have to go in and you have to individually set up all the stuff. It takes about a day. You're going to spend your weekend setting it up the Android handheld to work, but once it is set up, you're done. Whereas when you get one of these brand new, you're going to spend spend a day setting it up as well, because you got to go and download the CFW, flash it, and then move all your games over. So regardless, you got some work. It's just a matter of, would you rather use Android or would you rather use Linux to do it? Android is going to have a lot more features. I think out of just these two, based off of power and what I know about the handhelds, I would say that the Pocket Advance is the better one to get. I just don't like INEO, but this is the better one to get. If you want the ultimate Game Boy Advance and still having the original form factor, I would say that the Pocket Advance one is the one to get, because it's going to have all that Android functionality. And you're like, oh, you haven't even turned it on. He hasn't even turned it on yet. It doesn't matter. I played the Pocket Air Mini. It's the same chipset. I got this because I like the Pocket Air Mini chipset and I like the original Game Boy Advance form factor. So I already know I'm going to like this. And I think if you're someone who wants the original Game Boy Advance form factor slightly upgraded, that you're going to prefer this too, except for the D-pad. God, I wish I could explain the D-pad better, but it really is true. You can't compare this D-pad to anything else but a Pocket Air Mini. There is no other D-pad that I can compare this to. It's just not like anything else. So it's hard for me to recommend it because people are so picky about how their D-pad functions. I do like it though, but I've also seen Joey's retro handhelds and he says that he hates this D-pad. I don't. I like it perfectly fine, but I mean, I also like disc D-pads. I'm not really like that picky when it comes to a D-pad. As long as I don't get false diagonals, I really don't care. Now for the weirder comparison. Someone asked me to compare to the RGSP. These are so entirely different. Like, come on. Do you really need me to compare these two? They're entirely different. Not only does this run on Android, it is wide form factor. It is horizontal. This is a vertical form factor and runs on Linux. It's gonna come down to which one you prefer. Like, this would be a better comparison. At least they have something in common. They're both Android. The RG Rotate might be vertical and this might be horizontal, and that's going to come down to your preference for form factor. Which form factor do you prefer? Do you prefer a vertical form factor or a horizontal form factor? Are you going to be playing more Game Boy and Game Boy Color games? Or are you going to be playing more Game Boy Advance games? That's really all this comes down to, is form factor and preferences. Because if these are both playing Game Boy Advance, it doesn't matter which chip you use here, because both of these are near identical chips. They're very similar to each other. Other than this also doesn't have a headphone jack, but you know, the Game Boy Advance SP didn't have a headphone jack either. We didn't complain about that then either. Comparing these, do you like vertical or do you like horizontal? That's really it. And also, do you prefer Android or Linux? Android more power, I already told you all that. If you want more power, if you want to do more, if you want more functionality, you want more features, Android's the way to go. It is more setup though. This is vertical. It is Linux. Personally, I prefer horizontal, so I think this is worse in two different ways, and that's that it's Linux based and that it is vertical. Some people prefer those things though, so that's really the main difference here. It is a 3x2 screen, but it is a smaller 3x2 screen. This is 4 times resolution, and I think this one's 3 times resolution. If you are stuck between these two, it's because you don't know what you want. You have no idea what you're looking for in a handheld yet. And if that's the case, you should probably start with a Linux handheld, because I feel like an Android one is probably going to be a little overwhelming of setup for you, but at the same time, you're eventually going to have to learn how an Android one works if you want more power. But yeah, if you're stuck between these two, you should just get the RGSP, because you don't know what you want yet. And then this is easier to like say like, oh no, I spent money on it and I didn't like it. It's like, well, you only spent $60 on it. Whereas this is like, it's 89 plus shipping, so like 100 something, and then if you bought the 4GB one, it'd be like 120 something. Yeah, I mean, the D-pads are about the same size. The face buttons are a little bit bigger on the RGSP. I prefer just the overall everything on Android. Really weird comparison to ask for. The RG Rotate, this one comes down entirely to whether you would prefer vertical or horizontal, because the chipsets are comparable. Personally, I don't like vertical. The system is less comfortable. It is more pocketable, but it's less comfortable. The buttons are very clicky on the RG Rotate. They are exceptionally clicky and loud. You can't hear that well on the mic. People say the D-pad is terrible on this, but I think it's alright. It's been fine in my experience. It's very, like, if you like feedback, it's very feedback heavy. It's very snappy and clicky, although it is incredibly shallow. It doesn't have a lot of travel to it. Same with the face buttons. The rotate mechanic is cool, and I have not had any issues with the slider on it. But it does have a backwards firing speaker and no headphone jack, which people care about. I would still say it mostly comes down to form factor. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer vertical or do you prefer horizontal? I'd say like most people probably prefer horizontal these days, right? But if you're getting horizontal and it doesn't have analog sticks, there's not really a reason to get this either, to get the Pocket Advance either. Comparing these two to the Pocket Advance feels so apple and oranges. This is a little closer, but even then, this just blows that up instantly. This is immediately better than this. These two, they're at least comparable. They're the same form factor, but personally, in my opinion, the Pocket Advance one is just better in just about every way. It really depends how you feel about that D-pad. But again, I can't really explain how the D-pad feels because it's so unique, so different, so fun. Not saying the D-pad's fun, I'm saying the situation that I'm in here is fun, sarcastically. But yeah, if portability is your more important thing that you care about, then the Rotate or the RGSP are going to be something you should look into. If you're wanting something big, comfortable with large buttons, but still silent, I would say the Pocket Advance, and the Android is better on it. Based off of what I've got here, I think I prefer the Pocket Advance the most, with RG Rotate being a second place one. And the RG Rotate is probably going to go with me more places because it's more portable. It fits in my fanny pack, it fits in my pockets, it fits in a lot more places than this does, even though they're not that different in size. Well, I guess it is double the size of the RG Rotate, but that's it. Before I started playing this and doing a review for it, I thought I would share comparisons with y'all because people really wanted comparisons, and I guess other YouTubers aren't really doing that many comparisons. So there you go. I compared it to just about everything you'd want it to, except I forgot the original Game Boy Advance. But like, do I really need to compare this for you? Like, just look at how terrible that screen is. This one's a front-lit one, though. It's not one of the good ones. You're not going to be able to see crap on this. And then you also still have to get cartridges and stuff. Look at how dim that is. Terrible. Thank you for watching. If you got any questions or you want anything checked out for the final review of the Pocket Advance, let me know in the comments below, and I will take a look at it when I get a chance. Alright, thank you for watching, and thank you to my goons, Pupper Raw, Fabronaut, Linky, Willie Pete, and Dragon Fanatic. I'll see you all later. Bye!